I had been with Amanda for 2 years, a relationship I thought was rock solid. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. Everything seemed perfect until she started acting strange after a girls' night with her perpetually single friends. Suddenly, she was giving me the cold shoulder, sending cryptic texts and growing more distant by the day. I sensed something was seriously wrong but could not figure out what had changed or why she had transformed overnight. Before I continue this story about trust and betrayal, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Also, if you have ever experienced relationship tests, hit the like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this manipulation. Amanda and I first met at a marketing conference in Chicago. We were both waiting in line for coffee during a break between sessions, and she spilled hers all over my new shoes. Instead of being upset, I found myself laughing at her mortified expression. She insisted on buying me another coffee, and we ended up skipping the next session entirely, talking for hours about everything from our shared love of hiking to our mutual obsession with true crime podcasts and classic movies from the amazing 70s. The connection was immediate and powerful. We exchanged numbers, and within a week, we were seeing each other regularly. Our relationship progressed naturally without any of the awkwardness or uncertainty that usually comes with new romances. After dating for 14 months, we decided to move in together, finding a cozy apartment downtown with a view of the city skyline. Living together only strengthened our bond. We established comfortable routines that made our relationship feel like home. Sunday mornings were reserved for homemade pancakes and lazy conversations about the future. Thursday nights became our sacred date night, trying new restaurants or staying in to watch movies under a blanket. I had even started secretly looking at engagement rings, planning to propose within the next year. Amanda had 3 close friends who had been in her life since college. Tiffany was recently divorced and harbored significant bitterness toward relationships in general. Sophia was what you might call a serial dater, never staying with anyone long enough to develop anything meaningful. Julia focused entirely on her career, viewing relationships as unnecessary complications. All 3 were perpetually single and, looking back, probably not the best influences on a happy relationship. I never worried when Amanda spent time with them. Once a month they would have their girls' night, usually at an upscale wine bar downtown. I trusted Amanda completely and believed our relationship was solid enough to withstand any outside opinions. That particular Friday, when she kissed me goodbye before meeting her friends, I had no idea it would be the beginning of the end. When Amanda returned home that night, something was different. She came in later than usual, slightly tipsy but not drunk. Normally, after girls' night, she would curl up next to me on the couch and share all the gossip and stories from the evening. This time, she barely acknowledged me, mumbling something about being tired before heading straight to bed. The next morning, I noticed her constantly checking her phone, angling it away from me whenever I came near. When I asked if everything was okay, she gave a terse yes and changed the subject. Later that day, I realized she had changed her phone password. We had always known each other's passwords, not because we snooped, but because we had nothing to hide. This change was the first red flag. The following Thursday, Amanda canceled our date night with a vague excuse about work. This had never happened before, as Thursday nights were sacred to us. When I suggested rescheduling for Friday, she claimed she already had plans but would not elaborate on what those plans were. Physical affection between us decreased dramatically. Amanda, who had always been affectionate now, seemed to avoid my touch. When I reached for her hand or tried to kiss her, she would subtly pull away or offer her cheek instead of her lips. Whenever I attempted to discuss these changes, she would dismiss my concerns with an "everything is fine" that sounded anything but fine. Our first serious argument happened 2 weeks after that fateful girls' night. I finally confronted her about her behavior, asking directly if something was wrong with our relationship. Amanda became defensive, accusing me of being paranoid and controlling. Then she dropped a bomb that we had become too comfortable in our relationship. This from the woman who 3 weeks earlier had been discussing our future children's names. Things continued to deteriorate. While looking for a receipt in her purse with her permission, I found a receipt from a jewelry store for an item I had not given her. When I asked about it casually, she snatched the receipt from my hand and said it was a gift for her mother, though her birthday was months away. One evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone with Tiffany whispering about going through with it and how she was nervous. When she realized I was within earshot, she quickly ended the call and claimed they were discussing a surprise party for Julia, which struck me as odd since Julia's birthday was 6 months away. The anxiety began affecting my sleep. I would lie awake at night watching Amanda sleep beside me, wondering what had changed and what I had done wrong. During the day, I would analyze our conversations, searching for clues about what was happening to us. Amanda started working late, frequently offering new excuses each time. Some nights she would not come home until after 9, claiming project deadlines or impromptu team dinners. When I offered to bring her dinner at the office one night, she quickly declined, saying they were ordering in. Later, I discovered from her coworker that there had been no late meeting that night. Things continued to escalate when Amanda mentioned needing space and suggested we convert our home office into a second bedroom for her. I was stunned. Just months earlier, we had talked about eventually needing that space for a nursery, not a separation within our own home. One afternoon, while Amanda was at work, I was using our shared tablet to look up a recipe when a notification popped up from her synced messages. I would never normally invade her privacy, but the preview showed a message from Sophia that made my heart sink. "Are you still going through with the plan? He suspects anything." My hands shaking. I opened the message thread, only to discover that previous messages had been deleted, leaving this one isolated and unexplained. Amanda became hypercritical of my habits, things that had never bothered her before. She complained about dishes I left in the sink for a few hours, or laundry not folded immediately. These criticisms came with comparisons to her friends' exes. Comments like Ryan always kept the kitchen spotless, or David's apartment was always perfectly organized. These men she had previously described as controlling or boring were now being held up as examples I should aspire to. Desperate to reconnect, I planned a surprise dinner at home one Friday. I spent the entire day cooking her favorite meal, buying her favorite wine, and setting up our dining room with candles and flowers. When Amanda came home, her response was cold and distant. She picked at her food, checked her phone constantly, and asked if we could just order takeout instead, because my cooking was not what she was in the mood for. Around this time, Amanda began frequently mentioning an old college friend named Alex, who had apparently reconnected with her on social media. According to her, Alex was doing amazing things with his career, had just bought a new house, and was completely put together. The implication that I was somehow falling short in comparison was clear and painful. My best friend Mike noticed the changes in me. Over beers one night, he expressed concern about my weight loss and the dark circles under my eyes. When I confided in him about the situation with Amanda, he looked troubled but measured in his response. "Just make sure you are not ignoring red flags because of how you feel about her," he advised carefully. The arguments intensified, with Amanda creating conflict over increasingly trivial matters. She would pick fights about the temperature in the apartment, the way I loaded the dishwasher, or even the tone of voice I used when answering a question. Each argument left me more confused and desperate to fix whatever was broken between us. My work performance began to suffer. My supervisor pulled me aside one day to ask if everything was all right, noting that my last few presentations lacked my usual enthusiasm and attention to detail. I brushed off his concerns, unwilling to admit that my personal life was affecting my professional one. Then came the suggestion that broke my heart. Amanda casually mentioned over breakfast that perhaps we should take a break to think about things. She framed it as beneficial for both of us, a chance to gain perspective. When I asked if she was breaking up with me, she backpedaled slightly, saying it was just a temporary measure to strengthen our relationship in the long run. Later that week, I found a hotel receipt in Amanda's purse when looking for car keys. The date on the receipt was from the previous Tuesday, a night she had claimed to be working late. When confronted, she said she had booked it for a friend visiting from out of town, but could not explain why the reservation was in her name, or why she had not mentioned this friend visit. I suggested relationship counseling, desperate to save what we had built together. Amanda dismissed the idea immediately, saying our issues were too personal for a stranger intervention. I proposed a weekend getaway to reconnect, just the two of us away from distractions. She claimed she could not take time off work, despite having mentioned plans for a girls' weekend just days earlier. Things came to a head when I ran into Amanda's friends at a coffee shop. Usually warm and friendly with me, they were noticeably cold and avoided eye contact. Sophia whispered something to Tiffany when they saw me, and Julia suddenly needed to make a phone call. Their behavior confirmed my suspicion that whatever was happening, they were involved. The breaking point came on what would have been our 2-year anniversary. Amanda suggested dinner at the restaurant where we had celebrated our first date. I was hopeful this meant a reconciliation, a return to the relationship we once had. I spent extra time getting ready, even buying a new shirt for the occasion. At the restaurant, Amanda was unusually quiet as we ordered drinks and appetizers. Then, as our main courses arrived, she launched into what felt like a rehearsed speech. It was full of relationship cliches that did not sound like her at all. Phrases like, "I love you, but I am not in love with you," and "we have grown apart" echoed in my ears as I struggled to process what was happening. She mentioned feeling a connection with someone at work, though she assured me nothing physical had happened yet. She claimed I did not prioritize her needs and had grown complacent in our relationship. As she spoke, tears welled in my eyes. I could not believe this was happening, that the woman I had planned to propose to was ending things in such a cold, calculated manner. My initial reaction was to plead with her. I reminded her of all the good times, the plans we had made, the life we had built together. I asked what I could do to fix things, what changes I could make to save us. As I spoke, I noticed something odd in her expression. She seemed to be waiting for something, almost satisfied by my desperation. What happened next changed everything. As Amanda was explaining how she needed a partner who was more committed, more willing to take the next steps in life, her phone lit up on the table between us. A text message preview appeared from Sophia. Did he fall for the test? Is he promising to propose now? Time seemed to freeze as I read those words. Test. Propose. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. This entire nightmare, all the pain and confusion of the past month, had been orchestrated. A test to manipulate me into proposing. I stared at Amanda, the question clear in my eyes. Her face drained of color as she realized I had seen the message. She quickly flipped her phone over, but it was too late. The damage was done. Is this entire breakup a test? I asked, my voice hollow. Amanda fumbled for words, clearly thrown off script. She tried to deny it at first, then seeing my expression, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Yes, she admitted quietly, but only because I love you and want us to move forward. The explanation that followed made me feel physically ill. According to Amanda, her single friends had convinced her that after 2 years, I should have proposed already. They had planted seeds of doubt, suggesting that I was too comfortable and needed a push. The fake breakup was meant to shock me into realizing I could not live without her, ultimately leading to a proposal. There was no other guy at work. The hotel receipt was from a night she had stayed alone to make me worry. The password changes, the distant behavior, the criticisms, all carefully calculated to make me desperate to save our relationship. Even the anniversary dinner was planned as the final act, where my fear of losing her would supposedly drive me to promise marriage and a future. The absolute worst part was learning that her friends had been involved every step of the way. They had helped plan the test, coached her through my reactions, and were standing by for updates. The people I had welcomed into our lives, whose partners I had comforted when they went through their own breakups, had orchestrated my emotional torture for a month. As the full picture emerged, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, but now joined by something else, something cold and clear: certainty. Without saying another word, I placed enough cash on the table to cover our meals and walked out of the restaurant. Amanda called after me, but I kept walking, my mind whirling with the revelation. I needed space to process what had happened and decide what it meant for us. I spent the next 2 days at Mike's apartment, ignoring the barrage of calls and texts from Amanda. My friend gave me the space I needed while ensuring I ate and did not spiral into despair. As the initial shock wore off, I began to see our relationship with painful new clarity. This test was not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of smaller manipulations I had overlooked or excused. The time she had given me the silent treatment over minor issues, the subtle ways she had used my insecurities to get her way, the passive-aggressive comments designed to make me feel guilty, all formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. Rather than acting impulsively, I took time to think through my response. I researched healthy relationship boundaries and reflected on what I truly wanted in a partnership. Trust once broken is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Could I ever truly trust Amanda again, knowing she was capable of such calculated deception? After careful consideration, I made my decision. I would end the relationship permanently. No manipulation, no matter how well-intentioned, could justify the emotional torment I had endured. I deserved better, and I was finally ready to stand up for myself. When I returned to our apartment 2 days later, Amanda was waiting anxiously. She had filled the space with flowers and apology notes, clearly expecting that after my anger cooled, I would forgive her. She launched into apologies as soon as I walked through the door, promising it would never happen again, that she had realized how wrong she had been. I listened calmly until she finished, then delivered my response in a steady voice. I explained that her test had indeed changed our relationship forever, but not in the way she had hoped. Rather than pushing me toward marriage, it had shown me fundamental problems that could not be overcome. I told her I could never trust someone who would deliberately hurt me to manipulate my behavior regardless of the intended outcome. The shock on Amanda's face was immediate and genuine. This was not the script she had expected. In her mind, I would either have proposed by now out of fear of losing her, or, at minimum, forgiven her after the initial anger. The idea that her plan could completely backfire had never occurred to her or her friends. She became desperate, alternating between tears and anger. She accused me of overreacting, then switched to begging for another chance. She claimed her friends had pressured her, that it wasn't entirely her idea. When none of this worked, she called her friends for backup, putting them on speakerphone to help convince me. Sophia, Tiffany, and Julia were equally shocked by my response. They tried various approaches, from dismissing the test as just a silly game to suggesting I was using it as an excuse to leave a relationship I was already unsure about. Their attempts to gaslight me only strengthened my resolve. I spent the next week methodically preparing to move out. I created a detailed inventory of our shared possessions and proposed a fair division that favored Amanda, as I simply wanted a clean break. I found a new apartment across town, with Mike helped signing a 6-month lease to give myself time to regroup. Amanda's parents, who had always liked me, attempted to intervene. They invited me to dinner without Amanda's knowledge, pleading with me to reconsider. I explained the situation fully, including the month-long deception. By the end of our conversation, even they understood my position, though they were heartbroken about the outcome. The day I moved out was surreal. The apartment that had been our home, the space where we had built so many memories, now felt like a museum of a relationship that had died. Amanda alternated between tearful pleas and angry accusations as I loaded the last of my belongings into the moving truck. As I handed her my key, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The decision had been painful, but I knew it was right. The first few weeks after the breakup were difficult. I had not only lost my partner, but had to rebuild my daily routines from scratch. Simple things like grocery shopping or cooking dinner, for one, required adjustment. There were nights I questioned my decision, moments of weakness, when I considered calling Amanda to try again. Instead, I focused on creating a structured healing process. I established new routines in my new space, joined a gym to channel my emotions physically, and started a journal to process my thoughts. Each day became slightly easier than the last, small victories accumulating into genuine healing. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my relationship. Weekend hiking trips, basketball games, and even a camping weekend helped remind me of who I was outside of my relationship with Amanda. These friends provided perspective and support without judgment, helping me see that I had made the right choice for my long-term happiness. Professionally, my renewed focus led to unexpected rewards. 6 weeks after the breakup, I was offered a promotion at work, a position I might not have been emotionally available for had I remained in a toxic relationship. The confidence from this achievement spilled over into other areas of my life. I discovered new interests that had never been on my radar before. I joined a rock climbing club and started taking cooking classes, activities Amanda had never been interested in. These new hobbies introduced me to different social circles and helped me build an identity independent of my previous relationship. Therapy proved invaluable during this period. My therapist helped me identify patterns in my past relationships and understand why I had tolerated manipulative behavior for so long. These insights were sometimes painful but necessary for growth and preventing similar situations in the future. 3 months after our breakup, I ran into Amanda at a mutual friend wedding. She looked good, but tired. During a brief conversation by the dessert table, she admitted that her friends had given her terrible advice and that she regretted listening to them. She had lost not just me but also Sophia and Julia, whose own manipulative tendencies had become clear to her in the aftermath of our breakup. Standing there talking to her, I was surprised to feel peace rather than anger. The woman who had once been the center of my world now seemed like a character from a different story. I wished her well genuinely, and meant it when I said I hoped she would find happiness. The most profound lesson I learned from this experience was about communication and trust. Real love does not test or manipulate. It does not play games or set traps. Authentic relationships are built on honest conversations and respect for each other's boundaries. No matter how well-intentioned deception damages the foundation of any partnership. I also gained a new perspective on relationship red flags. What I had previously dismissed as quirks or temporary phases, I now recognized as warning signs. This awareness did not make me cynical about relationships, but rather more discerning about the people I allowed into my life. My sense of self-worth grew stronger through this experience. I realized that by standing firm in my decision to leave, I had chosen self-respect over comfort. This choice, though difficult, set a precedent for how I would expect to be treated in future relationships. When I eventually began dating again, my approach was fundamentally different. I was upfront about my expectations for honesty and direct communication. I listened more carefully and observed more closely, not out of suspicion, but from a place of self-preservation and wisdom. The pain of Amanda test ultimately led to a better life than I could have imagined. Had we stayed together, had I proposed out of manipulation rather than genuine readiness, we would have built our future on a foundation of deception and control. Instead, I found the courage to walk away and discovered a stronger version of myself in the process. Looking back now, I can see that the test was actually for me, but not in the way Amanda and her friends intended. It tested my self-respect, my boundaries, and my courage to choose authenticity over convenience. In that test, painful as it was, I finally passed. I believe we all face these moments in life crossroads, where we must decide whether to accept manipulative love or wait for something genuine. Have you ever experienced a relationship test or had to make a difficult choice between comfort and self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for listening, and remember that you deserve relationships built on trust, not tests. I will see you in the next story.